Adrienne Jezik. She's now a cold coach. She's created something called the Morozko method. And it's much more feminine in its approach. You're never going to hear Adrienne say, breathe, motherfucker. She's never going to yell at you with a bullhorn, because her thing is there's no bullying, there's no coercion. It's you must enter and exit the forge as if you were royalty. And so you always have, your composure, and no one bullies the queen. So I really like Adrienne's approach, and she did it because the more masculine, like aggressive approaches, they weren't working for her. She grew up in Florida. She moved to Arizona. She hates the cold. She's one of those people who say, I can't stand to be cold. She will argue with you about the thermostat, and she had no brown fat because as kids, you're born with a lot of brown fat, but you lose it over time. And if you don't, I don't know, go skiing or play hockey or do something cold, then you never get the cold exposure necessary to cause you to shiver, recruit new brown fat, and your thyroid gets out of whack. When the brown fat is restored, the thyroid condition is better managed. So it's no longer hyper or hypo. It will come into alignment with where it needs to be because it's got the brown fat on the other end to continue to communicate with. So we've covered a lot of ground. I don't have a protocol, but Adrienne has a method. It's called the Morozko method. There are meditations on our, YouTube channel. And one of the most critical aspects of this is the breath. The breath is the
Mm,
gateway to those autonomic aspects of your body that ordinarily you can't control. Your heart just it beats the way it wants to beat. Your stomach does what your stomach does. You don't have to think to digest. And so that's the
right.
autonomic nervous system. And these sympathetic functions do what they need to do. Your breath will speed up, slow down, but you can control it. So it's that gateway into somatic awareness and structuring your breath. It's okay if it's fast, it's okay if it's slow, but making it conscious and structured, that is the key to being in the ice bath. You
Mm,
cannot tough it out. Sometimes we'll sell ice baths to, football players and UFC fighters and bodybuilders. And when they go in there with an attitude like, I can take it, 45 seconds is about as long as I've seen anyone last at 34 degrees. When you surrender, you breathe.
mhm.
Adrienne's mantra is, this is what cold feels like. And it's a dialogue that you're having with your body. Every cell in your body is screaming at your brain, we're going to die. Get us out of here. What are you thinking? You have to talk back to the cells in your body, and you can't tell them a negative, because if you say, don't forget your homework, your kid is going to say, what? Forget my homework? You have to translate negatives, and your cells can't do it. So instead of saying, it's not that bad, you're not going to die, all the negatives your cells aren't going to get. Instead, you tell them what is happening. This is what cold feels like. And your toes, in this imaginary dialogue, they'll say, what? No, this is what death feels like. No, no, no. You're feeling cold right now. And the toes are like, really? That's it? And your brain's like, that's all. Just be cold. And everything comes down. Now you're strengthening your vagal nerve, you're strengthening your parasympathetic nervous system. This is how you're building resilience. And there's a good measure of it called heart rate variability. Your heart is not a metronome. I'm getting that from Jay Wiles at Hanu Health. He does some really good podcasts. He goes, your heart is not a metronome. It's not supposed to keep the beat like it's the bass player in a jazz band or something. It is supposed to lengthen, slow. You breathe in, that requires a certain heart rate. You breathe out, that requires a different, pulse. All the things that are happening to you, your heart is expected to adapt. So heart rate variability is a measure of how adaptive your heart is. There are a few things that you can do to improve your heart rate variability. That will improve your psychological resilience. And Jay talks about them, exercise, loving relationships, get a good night's sleep, all these things. We already know these things. Cold exposure will improve your heart rate variability. And it's only in the last, say, 5 to 8 years that studies have come out as wearable technologies have improved and people get more data, they start fooling around with cryotherapy and other biohacking things to see, well, what does this do to my heart rate variability? So it's no accident that the cold exposure that challenges our sympathetic nervous system, that creates in us the fight or flight response, gives us this safe environment in which to practice psychological resistance, strengthen our vagal nerve, strengthen our parasympathetic response, shows up in this physiological marker called heart rate variability as improved adaptability, improved nervous system adaptability, improved psychological resilience. It has the additional benefit of recruiting brown fat, fixing your metabolism, and modulating your thyroid to the point where you can resolve hypo or hyperthyroid conditions. And Adrian has experienced this. But you don't need to get to 34 degrees to do the metabolic stuff. 60 degrees is fine. You don't really need to get
Oh, wow.
uncomfortable. I, no, it's like just turn the thermostat down to 60. I forget where you are, but when I was going to school in northern New York, you just go outside for a walk in the wintertime. You get plenty of cold exposure, and the metabolic benefits are terrific, even at mild cold. But if you want to go for the psychological that I'm doing, it's got to frighten you. So, like when I look down and I don't see ice in the water, I'm like, all right, but I can do 50 degrees indefinitely. I want
Wow.
it to be 34 with ice. I want
Mhm.
the slush around my neck because that's what scares the crap out of me. And I only get that now at those super cold temperatures.